two things that also resonated were that being is the easiest thing.
Being is the easiest thing.
And secondly, that whatever you're trying to improve is an illusion.
Yes. Yes. Right.
When you made both of those statements, there was the freshness came back.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Step back.
Yeah. It's not fun to be in the improvement business. It's not fun. There is this trickery of the me that's like, oh well, if I'm not in the improvement business and I'm just in the peace business, then I'm in the boredom business. Yeah. Oh, what do I mean? I'm in the boredom business. That's another trickery. Yeah. In fact, that's a story, because presence is ever freshness. It's intelligence, it's clarity, it's creativity, it's celebration, it's joy, it's freedom and joy. You see, it doesn't have the same effect as having 5 miserable days during the weekend, going and getting drunk on the weekend. You know, it's not like that. It's just this present moment of light and freshness and clarity and being and well-being. And if it's peaceful and calm, it's peaceful and calm. And if it's inviting people for dinner, it's preparing dinner and being excited about buying the fresh ingredients, finding a really nice recipe that you think you will enjoy and that your guests will enjoy, getting a nice bottle of wine. And so it's this whole this trickery that oh well, then what do? I'm just like, I'm like, oh, I'm in presence. No, it's not like that. That's it. That's a story of me in time. Me being sort of like somebody did a lobotomy on me, and I'm like,
Yeah, because I think the conditioned self, at least my perceived conditioned self, does not equate, impulsive does not equate quiet to joy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you're saying, that the self has been in the business of excitement and stimulation, and that quiet is what's happening.
Yeah. Well, it's not the quiet in that be quiet or quiet your mind or quiet your tongue, or it's not that way. It's an openness, it's an availability, it's a clarity. You see, sometimes we think that the more things there are in the space, the better it is. But that's not true. The more things are in the space, the more confusing things are. Of course, there is a necessity sometimes to have certain things in the space, so they have a certain function. But once they serve their function, you let them go. They actually dissolve if you don't hold on to them. So it's not being quiet. It's that the quality of consciousness is openness, stillness, peace, and at the same time, infinite creativity.
The quietness as being open makes a lot of sense, because it's in contrast to judgment and evaluation. So whether there's stimulation or not, the quietness is just being in either one of those.
Right, because you say you could be looking out at the sky, and the sky could have clouds, or could be a clear sky. In either case, it's just the wide open space. So, irrespective of what is appearing on the screen is just this wide open space. See, so it's not about controlling or trying to manage what's appearing in the space. It's about realizing that what you truly are is not an object in space. Because if you perceive yourself as an object in space, then there is an immediate sense of threat that accompanies that belief. What's going to happen to me? You know, here I am, I'm an object, and there are a lot of bigger objects around me that might roll right over me. So there is concern, and therefore there is all sorts of thoughts trying to safeguard this form that I have identified with. And living a life like that is a life of concern and trouble and worry and unhappiness. So it's about recognizing what you truly are, recognizing the truth, the reality of your experience as I am this aware presence. I am not a form in time and space. Forms appear to me and dissolve in me, but I am not a form that appears in time and space. So in that understanding reveals, takes you home, it takes you to what you truly are, takes you to consciousness, reveals to you that you are consciousness. And consciousness is complete freedom and complete peace and stillness, and at the same time total creativity. Artistic thoughts, contemplative thoughts, celebratory thoughts, all arise. They arise to you. From where? They arise out of consciousness, and they're perceived by consciousness. So consciousness is the conceiver and the perceiver. The conceiver and the perceiver. It conceives and perceives and lives what it conceives and perceives. So it might conceive a trip to Europe, and it perceives it, and it might execute it and live it out of its freedom and out of its complete sense of freedom and celebration.
Right, it conceives and perceives without being threatened that its existence depends on what.
Absolutely, it has no existence in time. It is the eternity of consciousness. In religious term, they say God is eternal truth. I think that's one way of putting it in religious terms. The eternity of consciousness. Consciousness is not in time. Thoughts, perceptions, meditations, sensations are in time and space. But in fact, they're not even in time and space. They're in consciousness. Time is just is memory. Like, for example, like right now, if there was no memory of before, what would be time? So anyway, and memory is made out of thought. It's a form of thought. So time is memory, is thought. But if you contemplate what is the reality of thought, you have to come to contemplate what is the reality of thought right now. You can't contemplate it 5 minutes ago, or you cannot contemplate it 10 minutes from now. So if you contemplate what is the reality of thought right now, you come to consciousness. So basically, thought is consciousness.
If I contemplate the thought right now, I come to consciousness.
Yeah, because thought is only known via consciousness.
Contemplating thought right now feels like it's just sort of pouring out of nowhere.
Yes.
Just appearing.
Well, but what is nowhere? Nowhere is everywhere. No, what is nowhere? Nowhere is everywhere. Is the nowhereness and everywhereness of consciousness. You could say it's nowhere and everywhere, yes. So nowhereness and everywhereness is one way of talking about the physical location of consciousness. spatial quality of consciousness, nowhere and everywhere. Yeah, okay, sure. I think in religious terms they also talk about God being omnipresent, nowhere and everywhere.
I don't know if I followed enough, but I'm sorry if you already explained this enough, but I am not sure I understand why consciousness is thought.
Okay, why? No, I did not say that consciousness is thought. I said that thought is consciousness. So if you contemplate the thought, for example, the thought is, I love my mother. Yeah? And how do you know this thought? You only know this thought via consciousness. Yes? So you can, if you remove consciousness out of the thought, what would be the thought, I love my mother? It wouldn't exist. So the reality of a thought is not the thought itself. The reality of the thought is consciousness that knows it. Yes? So that's one way of looking at that thought is actually comes to consciousness. And then if you contemplate how far is the thought from the consciousness that knows it. Like we already established that the thought I love my mother is known via consciousness. Anyway, it comes to manifestation via consciousness. Because it's consciousness that knows it. Then you can contemplate, well, what's the distance of the thought from the consciousness that knows it, from the knowingness that knows it? You will find that there is no distance. So thought is consciousness. If two things are at zero distance from each other, they're the same, they're one. But the thought, I love my mother, can be now, there could be another thought that, gee, I love apples. That's a different thought, right? Now, that thought too, if you go through the same exercise, you will find that that thought also is consciousness. Right? The same exercise. That thought is basically known via consciousness and is at zero distance from consciousness. So that thought is consciousness. It's made out of consciousness. Its substance is consciousness. Is one with consciousness. But the thought I love my mother is no longer there. But consciousness is still there. So there is the thought is subordinate to consciousness. So all thoughts, all perceptions, all mentations, their reality is consciousness. But consciousness's reality is not a thought. Consciousness is its own reality. That's what's referred to as I am.
Like thought is like a plagiarizer. Because you say, what knows thought? The knowing knows thought.
Right.
It's undeniable.
Right.
But then thought wants to creep in and say that it wants to take credit for the knowing.
Yes.
It wants to say that thought knows thought.
Yes. Right.
It's
Right.
trying
Now,
to-
if thought can know thought, then thought A should know thought B. But if thought does not know another thought, and if thought is knowing, then a thought should know a perception. So the thought, I love my mother, should know the Pacific Ocean.
And I think, thought can pretend like it knows the Pacific Ocean. But what you said about the thought about loving your mother is gone, but awareness is still there, breaks that illusion that thought has.
Mm-hmm.
Has
Right. And you can also look at, for example, you can replace the thought with a perception. You say, for example, I perceive the oak tree. Yes? So, actually, you're not perceiving an oak tree, but we say, I'm perceiving an oak tree. You're perceiving your perception. But let's say, we mentate. We sort of make a thought out of our perception and we say, I'm perceiving an oak tree. You can ask yourself then, okay, does the oak tree perceive me? Okay, I know the oak tree, but does the oak tree know me? So you could substitute a thought, because as you said, the thought can plagiarize. You can sort of catch that trick by, okay, let's switch the thought with a perception or with a sensation. I know my toothache. Does my toothache know me? So it's really, really important to recognize that you touch the entire world, body, mind, but the world, body, mind does not touch you. You as consciousness know all perceptions, sensations, and thoughts, but sensations, thoughts, and perceptions do not touch you. Yes? Yes? So the body gets sick, but you don't. The body gets hungry, but you don't. The body gets sleepy, but you don't. The body dies, but you don't. The body travels, but you don't. The body loses an arm, but you don't. Nothing ever happens to you. This joke of this patient who went to see his psychiatrist and told the psychiatrist, I have a problem. I think I'm a mouse, and everywhere I go, I can't go out because there are cats everywhere. So he goes through therapy, for many months with the therapist, and he finally gets it that he's not a mouse. He's not a mouse. So he's cured. He's happy. He tells the therapist, thank you very much. And he leaves. He goes out the hallway. He comes back 2 seconds later, knocking on the door of the therapist. The therapist opens the door, and the patient comes in. His heart is pounding. He's all sweating. He says, doctor, there is a cat in the hallway. He says, yeah, but I thought you already cured. You know that you're not a mouse. He says, yes, I know, but the cat doesn't know that. Yeah, this identification, is stubborn, it's stubborn. We keep coming back to, wait a minute, what do you mean nothing's happening to me? Something is happening to me. We keep coming back to that, but nothing's happening to you. Nothing.